Hello, hello,
Hello,
hello.
hello.
Hello to everyone who is watching. Good morning. My name is Pastor Jen Bibb, and I'm here with my good mama friend, Pastor Shonda Burns.
Hello.
Hello. I met her several years back at a church conference that we were all a part of. And I just have watched her online and I just have watched her. She has a beautiful family. And I'm just so excited that she's on today. Today's mom chat is really about how it is to prioritize our families, our ministries, and our careers. And I just really wanted to talk to a mom that I feel like I see doing all of those things. So I want to kind of give her a minute to introduce herself. Uh, all right, Pastor Shonda, introduce yourself to the people.
Good morning. Good morning. What could I say? I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I am a nurse. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a friend, and working diligently to maneuver through all of those responsibilities and expectations. And
Yes,
I'm really excited to be here. I honor you for the opportunity to share and to talk and just chat
thank
and
you.
prayerfully help moms navigate through life.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's so funny because I had this mom chat planned for a few months. And then I don't know if you saw it in the news. Most recently, a man went viral for being at a college graduation where he told all these brand new college graduate women that, thank you, you guys have your degrees, you have all these things, but your best and biggest
Mhm.
responsibility is to be a wife and a mom. And I just thought, like, how rude, sir. How rude,
Absolutely.
you know?
Like I actually just saw that, so I thought it was recent, like from this week, and I was so offended, and I thought, where is he from? Where is he from? I enjoy being a mom, but I'm called to more than that.
Come on. And I really I think that um first of all, in this country, if we could be frank, there's Black women have always had to work.
Mhm. Always.
We have always had to give, and be more and not even be allowed to be moms. So that's on another thing. But like, I think I love my children so much. I honor that God has allowed me to be their mom. I'm so
Yeah.
thankful for all of those things. But to take my accomplishments and begin to try to make it seem as though my accomplishments are minimal
Mhm.
compared to my family is something that we don't do to men. That's number one. You never turn
Absolutely.
around to a man who has graduated from college and say, but your greatest accomplishment is going to be your wife and your children.
And he also, I mean, I was so appalled that you diminished who I am in a moment of one of my greatest
Greatest
achievements.
accomplishments, yes.
I'm finishing college and you're sitting here telling me that's great, but so basically forget what you've done, and being my wife and
Right.
being a mom are the only two things. But I want to live a life where my daughter, my spiritual children could see, just like Jesus was so many things. He was a father, he was a brother, he was a son. The Trinity is necessary. So that's an example for us that you could be multifaceted. And so it was hurtful, but I feel like women in general, but especially minorities, have always had to do more
Always,
achieve greater, work
always,
harder. And so you
always.
diminish us. Even if you want to go back to slavery, being a mom was something that you couldn't even be
Couldn't
because you
even
had to be a mom to other people,
to
children,
other people's
you know.
children. You're having to
So
nurse
it's
somebody
just
else's baby. You
sad.
couldn't nurse your own baby.
So it was really sad to me, but also a great opportunity for us as women to refute it and give us a platform to talk about it. And prayerfully, I pray that it helps men see how inappropriate that was,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, how inappropriate and insulting it was to those graduates.
Yes, yes. And to be honest, though, I think they said he got a standing ovation for that speech by some people.
And
That
what state was that in? I'm being so facetious because
right,
I could probably pick it, but it was just so sad to me. My mom actually called me about it because she was so offended and so saddened by it. To see, I mean, on their graduation day, you know, it was sad and disappointing, but it also reveals the heart of people,
it
the heart
does.
of men. So,
It does. And so we're going to tap back in because we were talking about today what it means to prioritize your family, your career, and your ministry. I thought, man, what perfect timing. Because after
mhm,
somebody would say something so nonsensical, what a perfect time to talk to a woman who another mom who is having to be a mom, who is having to work, who is doing ministry, and not to diminish that. We don't have to diminish or minimize anything that we do.
absolutely.
And so I want you to tell me, what do you do for a living? Let's talk about it.
So, for my career, I am a nurse. I'm functioning in assistant chief nursing officer at my facility. There's actually two assistant chiefs, and then there's one chief. And managing and leading nurses, male and female, managing their day, managing the care of our patients. I work in a short-term rehab facility. So these are people that have had some type of surgery, some type of illness that has set them back, and they're coming to our building as a short stay before they possibly go home or go to a nursing home. And our goal is to rehab them quickly. Sometimes they're there 2 to 3 weeks. And so I love it. I used to work in gerontology. I worked in long-term care for about 15 years and I loved it, but I also felt that I could do it in my sleep. And so an opportunity came up for me to do something different. And I was nervous because, you know, you become comfortable. I had so much access at my previous company, but I told him it was time for me to do something different. I was actually bored. I actually went back and took a certification program to be a wound care specialist. So I did that for a little bit, and I did that so well that they gave me this opportunity to be one of the top 3 leaders in our company.
That's amazing. How long have you been a nurse?
I've been a nurse. This year makes 22.
Wow.
August will be 22 years. I actually, and we talked about it off camera, I was in college and not doing well. Um, I felt that I was so sheltered that I had a good old time the first semester and tried to get it together and had some academic issues. And I came home and actually went to a junior college and got a really good job. And I didn't go back to college till I was 26. And so even for the moms that are hearing that, I went back at 26 and went back to nursing school and did extremely well. I was in a different headspace, had worked through some of my issues in life and became extremely mature. And I went back to school at 26. So whoever is on here and you're contemplating that, go back. It changed my life. It has changed my husband's life and my daughter's life as well. So go back to school.
Go back to school. Listen, I'm the same. I went to college as an adult. I graduated high school. And then I was at a church that really didn't believe in furthering your education, and so it was kind of like the Lord is coming back, and, you know, college is worldly kind of.
Absolutely.
And so I didn't go. Like, I didn't go to
Yeah.
college. And then I got married Tim and I got married at 20 and 21. I'm sitting here now. I have this newborn son. I'm broke as I'll get out.
Mhm.
And I was like, Lord, I got to do something with myself. So I started going to school when Tay was a baby. And at first I went and I was like, I didn't care if I did ice cream technology. I'm like, I just
Yeah.
need to get my degree.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it was in the middle of me going for paralegal. I was going to school for a paralegal studies or something that I realized that, first of all, I don't want to be anybody's secretary. And second of all, I had a passion to help people. So I started going into counseling. And so I graduated with my degree in pastoral counseling, and I currently work in nonprofit though. So I was doing severe and persistent mental illness until the pandemic hit, and then we moved because we transitioned from North Carolina to New York, and all of my clients went into crisis, mental health crisis, and it was just so
Absolutely.
hard for me that I did not want to go into a new place with that type of crisis and dealing with that population. So I went into nonprofit. So now I work in nonprofit, still being able to really help and shift communities. And I love that. So I work with the
Good.
Department of Human Services, where we're trying to help them transform the way they do service with the community. So I really
Good.
enjoy that. So yes, to any moms that are listening that are like, should I go back to school?
Absolutely.
Go back. 100% go back, get your degree, get your education, and do it for you and do it for those
Absolutely.
kids, because it's been important for
Yeah.
my kids to see me.
Yeah.
They were able to all be there for my graduation, see me graduate, and that is something that's really important to me. So I'm very thankful that I was able to be that example for them, show them
Absolutely.
what it means to do that type of hard work. And so I'm thankful for you saying it. Like, it changed my life, it changed my kids' life. Yes,
Absolutely. And
100%.
then one thing that I learned is the Lord wants us to have a seat at the table. And when I'm sitting at some moments are surreal for me. I'm sitting at the table with all the leaders, and not just the leaders of my immediate job, but our entire company. We own 22 buildings, and my voice is heard because of my role. So
Yeah.
they listen to what I have to say. I'm concerned about all people. And so when decisions are being made, policies are being put into place, it's not just from the male perspective. It's
Nope.
from my perspective as well. My perspective as a minority woman, some things that were never considered. So I'm grateful, and I sit in those moments, and I thank God that I was, like you said, willing to do the hard work, willing to work and go to school, and still, please go early. But if you have to go later in life, it's possible. Both of us are examples that it's possible.
It's so possible. And so, yeah, that's why my son is in college right now. My daughter knows, like, she graduates next year, and we're on college tours. Like, baby girl, what we're not going to do is have y'all struggling the way your mama struggled. So I need y'all to go get your education and make that happen.
Absolutely.
And so, again, to any moms listening, go get your degrees, go do what you need to do for yourself and your family. And not just, I went to school to do better for myself, right? But I knew what my family needed at that time, and I needed to be able to bring income in. I needed to be able to do that in a way that, and I wanted to be able to do meaningful work for myself. Like, there are things that I would do. There's community work that I've been out here doing for free that I'm like,
come on.
yeah, I need to do this, because ministry, we're going to talk about it next. Ministry doesn't pay that great. And sometimes
it doesn't pay at all, saints.
Okay, it doesn't pay at all. Again, so there were things I pastored with my husband for 6 years, and I never got a dime for that. I was out here in the community working, doing with the homeless. I mean, out days at a time, feeding the homeless, I did strip club ministry. I did I
remember that. Yeah.
Strip club ministry, crisis pregnancy counseling. I have done thousands of hours of community work and not get paid a dime for it. And so when my own family is struggling, it's like, well, wait a minute. I need to be able to work for things that I need to be able to get paid for things that I do. And so I went and got my degree. I went into a field that I cared about, that was meaningful to me,
That's so
so that I
good.
could make a difference in the community that I was already serving. Honestly, I just
Sure.
really needed to get paid. I just
And,
needed a
but
paycheck.
listen, that's so good because we interviewed this young lady the other day, and when you said that, it triggered that for me. You know, she's gonna start at $70,000, and she's 21. So if I had been 21 getting a $65,000-$70,000 job, I wouldn't be working out debt now and always being behind, you know. And so it is so, and I know that's a whole nother topic, but I want us to be in positions, have a seat at the table, but be making money to travel and to do things, to save. And we could talk about debt another time, but starting out life with debt, you
Yeah,
know, and not having good jobs. So I just want whoever is on here, I don't know who that's for. If you want to go to school, I don't care if you're 50 years old, go back to
go
school, and you could see what's the scripture say, your latter is going to be greater
back.
than your
Yep,
former. So you could have an opportunity to make money, and God restore the years that the cankerworm and the palmer worm
come on.
has
Amen.
stolen from you,
Amen.
because you're in a position of prosperity and wealth. So,
And listen, student debt is better than credit card debt.
absolutely, I agree.
And so we can talk about it all day. You know, people are so afraid of
That's
student
so
loans
good, Pastor. That's so good.
and this, that, and the third. But it's like, if it wasn't for me being able to have my degree and have some student loan debt, the amount of money that I make right now, I would never be able to make that in the field that I'm in without my degree. So it's like, I have
Mhm.
no regrets. Do I have some
I have
student
none.
debt? I
Yeah.
absolutely do have student debt. But
Mhm.
do I have a job that I'm able to maintain
Yeah.
some normalcy and a healthy living for my family? I absolutely do.
And the debt isn't from clothes. It's
Correct.
debt from pouring into yourself.
Correct.
And it's just a beautiful thing to be
Correct.
in a position where I could help take care of my family, you know. And I was talking about this the other day with my husband, and the favor that your husband obtained because of you isn't all spiritual.
It's not.
I think we were taught that it's going to be just a spiritual favor. No, there is some favor that he gets because of my seat at the table.
That's right. 100.
Financial. I mean, there's some financial blessings. There's some things. There were seasons where he was able to stop working because I was in a position where I could take care of the bills because of what I'm doing.
100%.
You
100.
know, and he can do it with peace, knowing we're going to be good. We're trusting God, but we're going to be good because of the favor from my wife.
Yep. And the other thing is, I was a stay-at-home mom for 15 years. And the other thing my degree afforded me to be able to do was to just kind of go back into the workforce and not have to, I did have to start from the bottom, but I did not have to start at such a low pay rate
Absolutely.
that, you know, we still were in poverty from it. So I
Mhm.
think I'm
Amen.
very grateful for that too.
Amen.
So
Amen.
yes, mamas, go back to school if you can. Like I'm a listen, I'm a cheerleader for that. Go back, go get your degree, go get your education, go make
Absolutely.
sure that you have something. And I know too many women in ministry, if we could just talk about ministry for 1 second, I know too many women in ministry that put all their eggs in a basket that totally flailed out and failed on them. And so
Mhm.
then when something happened to their marriage, I have watched it too many times. And I've
Oh, too many times.
very privately about it, maybe not on a public state, because you know, it's kind of funny the way people feel about it, and I don't always want to throw it out there, but I know women who've been married 20 25 years and their husband had an affair, and they've had nothing. They had nothing to fall back on.
Mhm.
They lost the church,
Nothing
they
to
lost
fall back on. And then they weren't even aware of their bills. They weren't even aware.
they didn't
They
know
lived
anything.
in a role. They lived in a role as first lady, which I have never. And if any of New Harvest is on here, that has never been my title. That has never been. And I don't want to offend anybody, but I thought it was limiting.
Yeah,
I'm my husband's only lady, and I had who was I called to be without him?
correct.
That's who I am with him.
Who was I called
Who
to
I
be
was.
without me? Him. That's who I am with him.
Yeah,
100%.
that's, you know. And so I was a minister before him. I knew that I wanted to be some kind of healthcare. I knew that I wanted to be a mom, but my dream in life wasn't only to be a wife. I
Yeah,
didn't grow up with these dreams of just my wedding. I wanted to be a wife, but I also wanted to be a woman that was in a position to make change. I
Yes.
wanted to be a woman that could, almost like a Harriet Tubman, where I can, Sojourner Truth, where I can pull you out because I have access and
Yes.
I have the wisdom to help reshape your thinking. That's really, it was really important to me, even as a young girl. And I didn't have the language for it then. But when I look back, I was still the same. Whatever I had, my mom would say, you wanted to share it. If you
Yeah.
had 50 cents, you would give your friend a quarter,
Yeah.
and that's who I was innately as a kid. And
Yeah.
so I've developed language and skill sets and a mindset because of the word of God to walk it out. But I was more than wanting to just be a wife. That's
Amen.
a part of who I am, but
Yes.
I wanted to be a career woman. I wanted to show Hannah, not that you could do it all, but you could do it all. That whatever God has called you to, you can do it,
You
because He
can
will give you grace to do
100%.
it.
You can do
Yeah,
what all God has called you to. And I love that. I
absolutely,
think it's,
absolutely.
I think that we do have to give our daughters more than just, hey, you're going to be a beautiful wife one day. And I tell my daughter that all the time. She is. I'm like,
Hmm.
you're going to be a beautiful wife, but she wants to be a teacher. She wants to be an
Yeah.
administrator in school. You're going to be that,
Yes,
I
absolutely.
tell
And you're going to do it well.
yes.
And then one of the things that I learned is that God will lead and guide us in all truth. So even teaching me how to do all of those things. Have I failed at it in some seasons? Absolutely. But when I look back on those seasons to judge why I failed, the core of it was internal issues that I possibly had with my identity.
Yeah.
And so going back, like, was I the best mom in every season? Absolutely not.
Well,
And when I wasn't the best mom, I look back to see, what was I doing the most? I worked at a facility that was absolutely draining. We had Department of Public Health in our building all the time. So that was my focus. I was gone 16 hours a day. And God will allow things to happen that brings a halt to us, to reset us. And she's not home and she's not watching this, so I'll say it. My daughter started her cycle at school and she called her dad. And I was so heartbroken.
yeah.
And the Lord allowed me to experience that. He took her to school, he picked her up, and she just viewed me as mom, but I wasn't always there. And so
Yeah.
it was okay, God. It recalibrated me that my child. So my husband, of course, called me. And what did I do? I told my boss, I have to leave work.
Yeah.
My daughter has an emergency because I need to show up for her. I can't
Yeah.
show up for the whole church and not show up for my child. I
Yeah.
can't show up for the whole church and not show up for my husband. And
Yeah.
so that was a hard stop for me to
Yeah.
recalibrate, rethink some things, create boundaries, create balance, create an expectation for Shonda, but also create an expectation for my job.
Oh, and that leads right into my next question. I love that. How do you feel you prioritize your career, your family, and your ministry? How have you had to stretch yourself in that capacity to do that?
I feel that at the beginning of our ministry is gratefully different than how it is now.
Yeah.
I believe at the beginning of the ministry, when you're a pioneer and you're building something and you're trying to build something you've never seen, because a lot of times what you've seen wasn't healthy, but
Yeah.
it was the norm.
Yes.
And so at the beginning, I would say everything was ministry. Everything was ministry. And I think everything took a back seat. But that wasn't healthy for my husband and myself, because ministry took precedence over our marriage.
Yeah.
And so and my husband and I have shared this before. I remember telling him once, and I hope we can be completely transparent.
Yes.
I remember telling him, one of my friends and my husband knows him. We're spending time always. My husband spends time with him. I spend time with him. And I told my husband, something is happening in my heart, because when my friend and I were going to go out to eat, I was concerned about how I looked. And I'm accountable to my husband. And I told him, this is abnormal for me to feel this way, but I realize we're out of balance.
Yeah.
We don't have any connectivity.
Yeah.
Your whole life is ministry.
Yeah.
Everything is ministry, and I'm last. And so I was excited that somebody wanted to spend time with me, and I knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
So I immediately told my spouse. And so we both had to look to see, we're out of balance.
Yeah.
And so at the beginning, like I said, everything was ministry, but we found ourselves repeating what we had seen.
Yeah.
And even though we're saying we want something different, what does the Bible say? The thing that I don't want to do, I find myself doing.
Yes.
So we began to build what we had seen.
Yes.
all the mistakes of what we had seen, the culture of what we had seen that we said we didn't want. And so we had to, what we put in place was, okay, every quarter, every 6 months, let's evaluate the last quarter and let's
Yes.
evaluate what we didn't like about it. Just like we would do a SWOT analysis at work,
Yep.
let's bring that home and do that at home and say, okay, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What were the opportunities? What were the
Yes.
threats? And what could we do different in this next quarter?
Yes.
And so those are some things that we've implemented that we walk out still to this day. And we have code words for one another. I can look at him in a crowd of people at the 10th church service of the week and say wife. And
Yes.
that means the wife part of me has not been poured into.
I
And
love
he,
that.
and we will say our goodbyes in a nice way, and we will go home or we'll go out to eat. And so just really, we just had a class, and the lady said, communicate to the point where you can't be misunderstood. So
Yeah.
over communicate.
Yes.
Don't communicate to be understood. Communicate enough and so well that you can't be misunderstood. And
Yes.
so communicating about what we need, communicating with my job. Hey, this is my daughter's graduation is next week. I can't be here till 6 o'clock every day. I'm just letting you guys know I have a hard stop at 3 o'clock so I can get done and out by 4. Because I failed, I failed her in some seasons and I failed him. So like I said, evaluating our expectations from one another, having date nights with one another, having dates with my daughter, with her, with me and my husband, and with her and my husband alone. Just being living in intentionality, because at the beginning we did it. Everything was ministry. Everything was ministry. But we were dying, and we were to people. We were effective. We were laying hands on the sick and they were recovering. We were doing everything for one another, for the ministry, and we were dying as a couple. And
Yeah.
so surrounding our lives with people that held us accountable to say, hey, when the last time y'all went on a date? When, we went to counseling, and not that anything was wrong. It was counseling that we put in place for a year to hold us accountable to one another,
Yeah.
not just ministry. And so walking those things out and remembering those tools, even now we're going on year 18 that we've been married, walking those vows out and being honest. Hey, all day you're at work. You can't come home all day and watch TV and watch the game. So we, having boundaries and having balance and holding one another accountable. And I'm surrounded by accountability.
Yes. I love that. Tim and I have been married. We're about to hit 23 years. So
That's
in
so
January it'll
beautiful.
be 23 years. Yeah, we got married, but
Yeah.
we got married as little
So
babies. That's why
young. Yeah.
you know it's like 20 and 21 years old, and so we have been through so many things. But that is so true what you're saying. One of the hardest things to do is to realize that your marriage, it's hard because people don't teach it, but your marriage is your first ministry.
Yeah.
These kids and this family that you're cultivating, that is your first ministry.
Mhm.
And so we learned in this toxic culture at first that, like, everything that you do inside your home comes last. And then
Mhm.
what you do and what you present out, to these people and this church is what really matters. What you do and what you present half the time is so fake. What you
So
do and
fake.
who you really are is what happens in your home. And it's while I was in school for counseling and therapy, I was like realizing just how emotionally unhealthy I was.
Mm-hmm.
It's what
Come on, that's my topic. Come on.
Yes. It's what started me going to counseling myself, is why I was in school for counseling. What some of the other reasons that I even did that is because I realized that I was get some of the worst advice I ever got came from pastors. No
I mean,
shade
listen,
here.
no shade, but I think about growing up. I didn't see my pastor emotionally available for his kids. Nothing against him. He's a gone on to be with the Lord. We
Yeah,
love
yeah,
him. He taught me to study. He's taught me to know the word and live the word and walk it out. But I also saw him miss his daughter's prom, miss all of her dances. She would come to the back of the church dressed for an event and wave at him and go. And I told my husband, when we have kids, I don't want us to be like that. But what
yeah,
happens? We end up walking out what we've seen.
yeah,
And so what we had to do, and that's how we met you guys, was do a complete shift and partner with people that are doing what we wanted to see in our
yeah,
lives,
yeah,
because we were repeating a bad culture in the church.
yeah,
Everything was about the church. Even when we planning events, we're thinking like, okay, Does that fall around graduation time? Because we don't want to have an extreme cost to parents during graduation time. This is prom season. So even having those meetings with leaders at our church, we're mindful of what's happening in people's lives. Okay, this is prom season. This is not a time to ask somebody for money. Okay, this is back to school time. So that's not the time to have this costly event. But I didn't grow up with those type of conversations. It is what it is. This is the expectation. Walk it out. And so changing that bad culture was really important to my husband and myself. And being around people that walked out what we wanted to see, it caused us to partner with people that were much younger than us because they didn't have the history as us.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't have the experiences as us, or if they had it, they hated it, and they were determined to do something totally different. And so even connecting with Apostle Stevenson, that was a shift for us, but it was an intentional shift for us. So our mind could be renewed.
Yeah.
So our history could be new. Our future could be new, not our history. Our future could be something different because we hadn't seen what we wanted to do. Yeah. And it's hard to pioneer when you haven't seen it. You repeat bad behaviors and produce the same thing.
Yes.
And so we had to do something different.
100%. 100%. And I think it's the same for us. We carved out when we started our church, we wanted something that we had not seen, that we had not yet seen. Mm-hmm. And I think even the truth is our little church, it did carry some things that we had so many people like, I've never experienced anything like this. I've never experienced anything like this. And it crushed us both to have to close our doors. But we did that because we were just trying to be obedient to God, which kind of leads me into our next question. But part of that obedience and part of that has been transition and trying to make sure that even in transition, even in obedience, that we still honor our family, our children, and our marriage.
Absolutely.
And so I'm so curious how you have honored your family, even as you've had to transition with your career and, your ministry. How have you been able to partner kind of with your husband? And I think that when you're pastor a church, and I know that for me, it was always taught to me for years that ministry is about Tim. It's not really about you, Jenn. It's about whatever Tim got going on. That's what you got going on. Mm-hmm. And I internalized that a lot. And I was like, okay, well, Lord, just let that man make it. If he's good, I'm good, But then I started being successful in my own rights, in my own career. I graduated high honors in college. It was all these things. And even now I'm going to talk about this, but then I want you to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Every time we transition. So we did our first transition in 2020. We transitioned to Rochester, and my job at that time was like, Jenn, do you have to leave? We have so much future. We see so many things for you. We are ready to put you in leadership. I can't believe if you don't have to leave, I'm telling you right now, there's so much future for you here. And I was like,
okay.
I did not want to leave Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was like, it's always something where when it comes to me, I'm not having to leave my life and my dreams and all these things. Okay, so now we're going to fast forward. I got to Rochester. I had one job. I switched. Now I'm at another job, and I've been there 2.5 years. And when I told my job I was leaving, first of all, they just gave me an $8,000 raise. That's number one.
Mm-hmm. Talk about it.
Second of all, they're like, oh my gosh, we are so sad you are leaving. Why are you leaving? Why do you have to leave? And I'm like, it has been a real challenge for me to want to give up that. And I thought today, and I've been thinking it anyway, I go for obedience to God, not necessarily because of what things that people are telling me are so great. It's like, I get it. Anywhere I go, if I plug myself in, if I apply myself, I know that I will flourish there. Is it hard
Absolutely.
for me to want to start over? 100%. Is it hard for me to make this decision to leave all the comforts that I kind of have? Suddenly now we're put our house on the market, which is beautiful there. We're having to switch kids' school, all these things. And it's like, but at the end of the day, Jenn, and anybody listening, that it is
Yeah.
hard, but it's like I'm going to be obedient to God. That's at the end of the day. And so
Amen.
when my husband speaks on something, when we pray together on something, it's like I have been attached to what I have, but I know God has greater for me. So that's kind of how I have had to prioritize it. It's like, it's not, I get it. Everybody wants to put me in leadership if they find, I have a skill set. I'm good at what
Mhm.
I do. So it's like anywhere I go that I can put my all into, I'm going to care in that space.
Mhm.
I'm going to flourish in that space, and
Mhm.
I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
But
And
what
your gifts are going to make room for you.
yes.
And I think what happens for us, even when I first started dating my husband, I lived actually in Tennessee. I lived in Cordova, Tennessee. And I told him, I said, hey, I am so established here. I work for Baptist DeSoto Hospital. I can retire here. They match my retirement. I'm telling him all these things. And he said to me, my ministry is not called there. Like, womp, womp, womp. And so I have learned that obedience is better than sacrifice. But I've also learned to communicate to him how I'm feeling about it.
Yeah.
I've learned to cry. I've learned to tell
Yeah.
him, how I feel. I remember when we were in premarital counseling, the counselors, because we had a husband and wife team, they said to him, make sure you understand ministry isn't only about you,
Yeah.
that the Lord called Shonda in her mom's belly.
Yeah.
And so I think putting that in his heart and his mind early on helped him consider me. Has it been easy for us to transition? Because I moved from down south to come here. And of course, I'm eager and excited to get married. Then I go to a church that has like 2,000 people and they all love him. And that's been his church for 20 years. They were not happy to receive me. A lot of women were after him. He had been married before, had been married for like a year and a half, ended up getting a divorce. And so he chose somebody not from the culture, and so it was really hard for me to transition, but through it all, I was determined to share with him how I felt.
Yeah.
I share with him my experiences. People were nicer to me when he was standing by me than when I was alone. And so I chose to share those experiences with him. One of the things that I have been to my husband because of my career is an anchor financially.
Yeah.
So some of the transitions was me processing his transitions,
Yeah.
transitioning off of jobs and leaving different roles so he could pastor. Because I was totally against that you had to quit your job to pastor. Like, that's the old playbook. That was, my thing. Like, dude, okay, Lord, he going to transition off his job, but our finances have to be the same.
Yeah.
So we need to work this out. And so God will begin to open doors for him to go minister where he could receive finances. So our main transitions have been me being there while he transitions and me processing it. Him telling me that he's going to transition off his job. I was against it for the longest. And then the Lord began to deal with me in my private prayer time about who he was in the earth, what he was calling him to do, and to prepare us. It was like maybe a 3-year. I said, well, Lord, prepare me for that. And so they actually came to him and said, hey, we're going to outsource his entire department with a company in India, and he's going to have to train them all. And so this was maybe like a year and a half. And so God is so gracious towards us. He gave me that time to process through it. So I've just learned during transition to communicate with him how I'm feeling and not just take it to the Lord and leave it there. I'm going to talk to my husband about it.
Yes.
Because my husband is the type to assume if I'm silent, I'm good.
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to say, this is bothering me. I'm afraid. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. And I know the Bible says be anxious for nothing, but I'm telling you, I feel anxious. I feel, are we going to be able to tithe? I talked to him about everything.
Yes.
Are we going to be able to shop? I don't want us to be pastors that are broke and
Yeah.
we don't have the things that we need. And
Yes.
I would even write it down. Lord, I want our tithe not to change.
Yes.
That was one of my requests to him. I don't want our tithes to change. And then God began to open doors even for me to go minister. And
Yes.
so, like I said, for transitions for us have been primarily him, not necessarily always me having to transition. I worked at my one job for 15 years and then transitioned to this role that
Yeah.
I've been there for like 3 or 4. So just learning to communicate with him and communicating with our daughter. I don't know if that's me beeping. I'm sorry if that's me.
Oh, it's not you. Uh,
Um, you
sorry.
know, it's
Yeah.
okay. And with certain things, we talk to our daughter about it. What we've learned, even when leaders have transitioned to other ministries out of our church, we actually sit down with her and talk to her about it,
Yeah.
especially when it's been leaders that have been over the youth, because we forget that they grieve and have to process through that. So we're very intentional, like sitting down with Hannah to say, hey, how do you feel about it?
Yeah.
This particular leader is going to leave in 2 months. They've told us that God has called them to do something else. How do you feel about that? Because
Yeah.
I know they're close. So we're very intentional about having conversations, grieving it. I taught a message recently: grieve it, but don't die.
Yeah.
Grieve it,
I love
process
that.
it, talk about it, be angry, but sin not. All of those
All of
things.
that. All of that.
And we want to teach her how to do that in life, because even transitioning to another school, she has to grieve her a whole group of new friends and getting to know people and new teachers. She's been at the same school since preschool. So preschool to 8th grade. It's
Yeah.
a grieving process. So I tell my husband, Lord, in our prayer time, Lord, help us to grieve things well so we can teach Hannah how to grieve them well, but don't die.
Yes. You know what? That is so beautiful. This current transition that we're in is probably harder than the previous one. And it's harder because my kids have made such great connections. So London has this great group of friends. Judah, best friend, lives on our street. Like they even told me, they're like, Mom, North Carolina is you and Dad's home, but Rochester is our home.
Wow.
And so then to like take them away from it has been, I've grieved it a lot because
Yeah.
I've been sad, for
Yeah.
them, but the Lord has been so faithful. So they both go to this like private Christian school that has been, I stood on their necks about, some of
Yeah.
the
Come
stuff
on. Yeah.
that was racially aggressive that I just didn't like. But then
Mm-hmm.
it's been such a blessing to see how they both grown there. So two of the teachers, as a matter of fact, went to London before we ever announced that we were moving. And in one of their chapels and one of their prayer times, they started ministering to her like, you're gonna have to move. Your family is.
Wow. Jesus. Oh, that put chills through me.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So it's like God began like preparing her little heart and mind.
Mm.
My husband and I had the same dream the same night last year in May. And he's like, babe, God told me an opportunity is coming. And when it comes, to take it. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, Lord, I just got settled, like I don't
Yeah.
want to like uproot my life again. But at the same time, there is no home without my husband.
Come
There is
on. Whew.
no,
Yeah.
life and future. And I've even had two of my coworkers, because I really, really like my coworkers. And so one of them is a really close friend of mine now. But she's like, Jen, have you pushed back on Tim? Like, maybe you shouldn't leave. And I'm like, do you think I would stay here without my husband? Like, I'm
Come
not trying
on.
to be funny, but
Yeah.
I would never stay here. There's no
Yeah.
bib 5 without Tim,
Come
and so
on.
it is hard, and it is, emotional, and it is all these things. It's like I am on the journey and I'm in the transition and I am grieving, and this is hard, but I wouldn't do anything different than what I'm doing right now.
And you guys are grieving it together. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for Zooms and FaceTime and all those things. So the kids have to intentionally stay connected to their friends
Yes.
and
Yes.
play. And like, okay, Friday from 4 to 6 is going to be our time or whatever it's going to be. But it's hard. But I promise you, God is going to bless them,
Yeah.
bless you guys for your
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And the thing about ministry, And once you see it as we're doing it together instead of it's his thing, like Hannah understands, we do ministry together. It's not just me and your dad, it's all of us because it impacts our
All of
entire household.
us. All of
The
us.
good, the bad, and the ugly impacts her. I told her, I said, you can't just be happy about the fish and the loaves that you get because you're our daughter. I said the process of transitions and growth and expansion and the increased expectation from us. And so it's tough, but you have to live in intentionality, that you take
Yeah.
moments, take those Selah moments to say, God, that was tough. Man, that was
Yeah.
hard. That hurt my
Yeah.
feelings. Oh, that
Yes.
was rude. We allow her to be human, and we
Yes.
allow her to see our humanity, to say, yeah, we'll go home and say, yeah, that hurt my feelings. Yeah, that hurt my feelings, Hannah. But I want her to see me process that well,
Yes.
because I'm establishing that inside of her soul that,
Yes.
man, I saw my mom get disrespected and she went back there and loved them.
Yes.
I watched my dad, I watched them. And so even though she might not have the total language to get that, she's still taking it in, just like we took all these different things in growing up. And so grieve it, process it, talk about it, celebrate it,
Yeah.
celebrate the victory of it, celebrate like we did it, we obeyed God and the fruit of it. Because even where you're going now, the fruit that you have now helps you to function in the new seat.
100%. 100%. And
Yeah.
I'm so thankful. And I'm really, my husband's not here. I think he's like working today. And so
Mm-hmm.
he's been very like understanding of, because all of us are having to process this together. So we have had to sit our kids down. And you said earlier, you and Apostle did like an assessment, over
Mm-hmm.
your relationship. And that's
Yeah.
something I created when my kids were really young. I do these family assessments. We do them
Mm-hmm.
yearly, but anybody in the family is able to call a family meeting at any time so that we can all discuss what's
That's
really going
good.
on. This is
Yeah.
how I feel. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm trying to process through so that we can really talk about it. And
Yeah.
again, nothing is ever perfect, but we really do try to over communicate with our kids so that
Mm-hmm.
number one, they know that they have a right to feel the way they feel. Number two, they know that they have a support system. My daughter
Absolutely.
has had a rough time with this transition. And one day I kind of like pulled her, I let her just not go to school. And me and her went to breakfast. And I'm like, listen, I know this is hard. So me and her crying together because it's like,
Yeah.
again, my job is out here like, yo, the future is yours, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm leaving, and
Mm-hmm.
she's kind of going to go into her senior year,
Her
start
senior
getting.
year at brand new school. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've just kind of grieved that together. And I'm like, listen, we're in this together. This hurts like crazy, but you're not alone in hurting,
Mm-hmm.
and just having to allow her to process it in a way that, like I have to be honest to hear her out. And I've been willing for that. My baby's, Tay, he's at college. He's kind of like, yeah, well, I'm gonna have to look for a new job when I come down there potentially, while
Mm-hmm.
I'm away, but I'm at school, so it doesn't affect him. And then Judah, as we were getting our house ready for the market, he's like, man, this kind of hurts. I don't want
Oh.
to leave, and it's like, I know, buddy, but he's like, but we're gonna be all right. We're gonna be all right,
Mhm.
and
And
so
this is who your mom and dad are, but they won't see it yet. It's who they are
yeah,
as well. And God is teaching the body of Christ how to transition well,
yeah.
because we failed at that.
So much.
We have failed at that like royally. And so I believe the Lord is going to allow your family to really talk about it, maybe even do a live about it, and allow your kids to share like what that looks like. And I don't even know if it's for PKs. I don't know, because I feel they go through a lot that people wouldn't understand unless they're sitting in that seat.
Yeah.
And so, but just transitions are tough. Learning new people are tough. Learning how to trust all over again is tough.
So tough.
Meeting your neighbor, everything, you become really close,
Yeah.
and it's hard. And they're also in internal transition as teens.
Yes.
So I'm definitely praying, but I do know over communicating, allowing them to say whatever they feel, even if we disagree,
Yeah.
or if we don't even understand it, because I didn't have to do that as a little kid. and letting them talk about it, letting them cry. And I'm so proud of you. Even let her take that day off from school to say, hey, let's take a halt. And I want to hear what you have to say. And I understand it's tough.
Yeah.
And mom's scared too, but we're going to do it together.
We're gonna do it together. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And then my last question for you today is kind of like, I want you to talk about how you kind of carved out your own ministry for yourself. Cause I know you do these things with ladies, and then you work, and then y'all pastor. So just leave us off with that. That's what we're going to end with today. How have you carved out, your ministry?
One of the things that initially I told the Lord that I'm all in and pour into everything that my husband is doing. And I'm going to put on the shelf what you've called me to do. And not that I'm disobeying you. I want to really establish him. I want to be a good wife. I want to establish that. And so a few years in, the need began to arise so great that I had to respond to the cry of the women, the cry of the initial conferences that I started doing were called Taking Off the Mask.
Yeah.
Because I saw women showing up, not their authentic self. And so I just think the need pulled out of me what was in me. And so I began to create what they needed. And then I began, even with the cave experience, something that I launched couple years back. I began to have dreams about me doing. It was as if I would go into a cave and the cave would be full of women and I would pull them out and I would let it go. It was during the pandemic I started having these dreams. And I'm like, Lord, what is that? Because there is no way I'm doing a conference during the pandemic. People aren't even going to church. And so the dreams began to repeat themselves frequently. Then I began to receive the word of the Lord. And so making sure that my husband was established, everything that he needs was established, was important to me. And then being intentional about planning that, what I'm called to do, and finding the balance in that with my work, with my daughter, with my husband, with my church, and also what I'm called to do in the marketplace. And so I'm a planner. My team is very intentional about planning everything around everything that I'm called to do. Because at first, I want to do it myself, but I would pray for God to send people that understand my vision. And so I have huge teams to help. The cave has about 30 women that help push that, pray for it, help build it. They're mindful of seasons at my job where I know we're in our public health window. The window is 3 months. That's 90 days. So I don't plan things during those 90 days. So I'm just very intentional about making sure my husband is good, sharing with him what God is saying to me. And I seek him because not only is he my husband, he's my pastor.
Yeah.
So I submit the vision of what I see to him. And I ask him, what I want you to pray over this. What is God saying? When is the time to launch? This is what I'm thinking, but what is God saying to my pastor about what I'm called to do? 100%. So I'm very intentional to communicate with him. I never want to do things that financially impact our ministry. So I'm very intentional about planning, creating tickets that cover those events.
Yeah.
Because I want to be in the will of God. Like you said earlier, obedience is better than sacrifice.
Yeah.
I'm very intentional about submitting whatever God is saying to me, to him. And I submit it to women that I have in my life, spiritual moms, mentors, saying, this is what God is showing me. I want all of us to pray. I never want to step out and do something that looks good and sounds good, but it wasn't the time or season for me to release it. So I think because we've submitted it to God, we've had tremendous success early on.
Yeah.
Like the first conference, you have 200 people. And it's like, when you obey him, and people calling me saying, hey, I just believe in it. I want to sow into it. Even when I decided, okay, we're not going to do it this year. People calling me to say, hey, I had a dream. God spoke to me. Don't cancel it this year. And I'm like, okay. So just making sure I'm intentional about submitting, making sure my husband is good, whatever transition he's in, whatever he's called to do, submitting my plans to him, as I've submitted them to the Lord, asking him for guidance and submitting them to my team so we can do it together. You don't have to do ministry alone. Whatever you're called to do, you don't have to do it alone. That's like a complex we have sometimes as African-American women. We've been taught to be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. Yeah. But I do it with the
100%.
team.
Yeah, I
Do it
love
with the
that.
team.
I love that. And I think more than anything, I love it that you are like, my husband is my pastor, because I tell people that all the time.
Yeah.
I submitted my life to Tim Bibb. And so I really do honor what is on his life. And I'm
Absolutely.
submitted to what to come up under that, honestly. And his obedience to God has taken us further than anything my flesh could
Absolutely.
ever do. And I
I
think that
mean, that is so good.
it's
My
just
husband
that
is a whole prophet, walks in the office of a prophet. So
yeah.
I will ask him, what is God saying? What do you see? I mean, I'm so detailed. I will like submit a proposal uh, to say, hey, we want to have it black, pink, and gold. And he was like, what's the purpose of that? And I'm like, literally, this is what this means. The black is the old man, and the white is this. And I'm like it's so dramatic. But I submit it all to him. And these are the dates. I'm trying not to compete with Easter. Easter's big at our church. I'm not trying to compete with Mother's Day. So I don't want to compete with our church anniversary. So all of these things, I think about it from a financial standpoint, but I submit to him. I submit to the wisdom of God in him. So if he said to me, the Lord said, you're not supposed to do it this year, I will shift. I might cry, but I will shift and obey, because I will believe the Lord is protecting me from failing.
Yeah. I love that. One of the things that I think that I've learned in any transition with Tim is when I've watched him, because without, because we're ending, so without going too deep into my story, I know one day I looked at him and I'm like, hey, bro, when are you going to work for God? That's who you told me you work for, and I need you to say yes, because as you say
Like,
yes, it
whoa.
helps our family flourish. And one of the things in watching in the middle of our 23-year marriage, watching him really just submit his entire life and his entire yes has done nothing but elevate him. And in that elevation, it elevated me.
Yeah.
And so that's
Amen.
something that I just kind of trust that process. I'm not saying that it's easy. It wasn't easy to leave Winston-Salem. I left my dad. I left all my friends. That wasn't easy. And it's, again, circling back around, it's not easy to once again uproot my life and leave Rochester, but I do know that it's the will of God. And so I'm so thankful to hear your story and how you kind of like, no, I submit my process to my husband. No, we have to communicate everything through every season, every transition. I've submitted that to God and to what I need. And I think that so many women need to know how to kind of do that well. What does it mean to submit to a process? What does it mean to submit to a man? Because I think people look at submission and they think that you're just blindly following some man who sometimes don't even follow God. And that is not what submission is about. They think it's, minimizing yourself. Again, that's not what it's about.
It's actually strength in doing that.
Correct. There's so much strength in doing that. And I thank God that my husband has had to grow. We've had to grow together, because I do think that when we did first get married, it's kind of like, well, can Jenn sing and play? That's all that she need to do. That's all we need to know. But I'm a whole pastor out here.
A whole pastor.
Yeah. And so he's actually had to bring me out of those shells. He's had to help me. He's had to restore me in some areas too, because that's what marriage is about.
Absolutely.
We have to do that for each other. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Listen today. I hope some moms were blessed. And thank y'all. This will be my last mom chat until I fully transition, because I'm tired, y'all. I'm tired.
We're praying for you.
Thank you. This has been rough. But thank you for everybody who joined us today. Thank you, Pastor Shonda, for coming.
I love you.
All be blessed. Have a good Saturday.
All right. Love you.
Love you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.